friends and family, welcome to my kitchen. Today we are going to make my grandma's famous recipe called cinnamon swirl bread, or what we affectionately called grandma's circle bread. She used to bring this at our Easter gatherings, our Christmas gatherings, and we all sort of fought over it. So without further ado, let's get started and make this wonderful bread. So the first thing you're going to need, now this is a very old recipe. Just a minute, let me call my mom and ask her how old this recipe is. Hang on. Let's do it. Mom.
Hello?
Hey Mom.
Yeah.
I have a question about Grandma's circle bread.
Oh yeah.
So how, did you guys have that when you were kids, or how old is that recipe?
Well, I guess I remember from like high school.
Okay. And you...
But you know what? I think I've got your cookbook. I spilled water. What do you need? Or what do you want? Or what's your question?
Well, I just want to know how old that recipe is because I am doing a video on it. And then I just wanted that information.
Oh, okay.
Because it says like scald your milk and cake of yeast, and I just wondered how old that is.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember when she started making it, but I don't remember it. In high school, I guess I remember she was making it.
So that would be the 50s for sure.
Yeah, that'd be the 50s. Yeah, so...
That's so cool. Okay,
anyway.
Well thanks for that information.
Okay, good luck.
Okay, thanks. Love you.
Okay.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.
So there is that. So this is a little bit old-fashioned because it talks about using a cake of yeast and scalding the milk. And scalding milk is something that they used to do before apparently milk was pasteurized. But now when we buy milk, it's all pasteurized all the time. So we don't really have to worry about that. But they do say when you scald the milk, it does make it nicer to use in your recipe. So that's what we did today. So let's start. Cinnamon swirl bread by Clara Hartzler. 1 cake of dry yeast, but we did 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry yeast because that is the same equivalent. 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup warm water, 1 tablespoon grated orange peel or peel from a whole orange, 1 cup of milk scalded, 1/4 cup orange juice, and I just used the squeezed orange juice from the oranges that I had, 1/2 cup of sugar plus 1 cup, 1 slightly beaten egg, 1/2 cup shortening, which I didn't have, so I just used butter, and 6 to 7 cups of flour. Now I just used regular all-purpose flour. I don't think Grandma ever used bread flour much in those days. And I used about 6 cups, not quite 6 cups for this recipe. So first thing we're going to take care of is to soften our yeast in the 1 cup of warm water. I got the warm water from the tap. Just make sure it isn't too hot, because if it's scalding hot water, then it can kill the yeast, and then you will have a done recipe. Let me check the bread. So we don't want to do that. Now we combine the scalded milk, the sugar, the shortening, salt, orange peel, and orange juice. I'm just going to stir that up. And when, that's going to cool it down to lukewarm. And after that, I'm going to stir in only 2 cups of the flour. I'm just going to put it in my KitchenAid and let that do the work for me, and beat until smooth. Then I'm going to add the egg slightly beaten and the yeast mixture and beat again. And then I'm going to add enough flour to make a soft dough. So I'm going to just add enough flour that I can sort of stir it up and mix it up, and then I'm going to turn it out onto my countertop, and I'm going to just start kneading it by hand. I'm just going to dump a little extra flour on there to make sure it's not so sticky that I can't work with it. I didn't have to knead it very long at all, just until it was all combined really well in a smooth, silky, soft dough. And then I put that into my bowl and I let it rise until doubled. You can put that in a warm place so it will rise the best. Divide the dough into 2 equal parts. Roll out into 15-inch by 7-inch rectangle. Sprinkle each with 1/2 cup of sugar. That's right, 1/2 cup each, and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon each. And then sprinkle with 1 tablespoon of water. Then you roll them up. Put them in bread pans. I have the actual bread pans that my grandma used to bake with. So that's pretty exciting. Let them rise. And bake at 350 degrees for 20 minutes or until browned, it says. I'm currently baking them right now, but whenever my grandma made this bread, the tops of it got really super brown. Almost you would think it was burnt, but that just made it so good. And it wasn't burnt, they were just so dark brown. That's what made them special, and you always knew that was grandma's circle bread. One of the things that surprised me about recreating this recipe and trying to do it exactly the way she did it was how the memories of her became so vivid, as if she was right here with me, and the smells of the cinnamon and the orange peel, and now this smell of the bread baking, and I'm waiting for it to get really, really, really brown. And I'm just peering at it and thinking she probably had to sit there and look at it until it got the right color. And maybe Grandpa or her kids were like, "Are you gonna take that bread out? It's really dark." But I miss her, and I miss her voice, and I miss her little gingham dresses, and she was so full of love. And I think maybe that's what made this bread taste so good, was just because she was the most loving lady. Her and Grandpa both were just the most loving, wonderful people. And they were full of love because they were full of Jesus Christ. That was their main thing in life, was the Lord. And we can be full of love too when we're full of Jesus. The Bible says, and I have it right here, in 1 John 4 verse 16 says, "And we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him." And there was just no doubt that God abided in my grandma and grandpa. So everything that she made was wonderful. And the Bible says, like, do all things in love, and it makes such a big difference, because if somebody would have threw that bread down on the table in front of us kids and said, "Here, eat this, pigs," like, that wouldn't have tasted good at all. In fact, that would have been really gross tasting, because it wasn't made with love. It was whatever that word is, but that makes the difference. And when we're going out there and sharing the love of Christ, we have to do it in love. And if we're not filled with the spirit of love, we might as well not even bother doing it. So we have to get ourselves right first. First things first, get ourselves right with God. And then we can go out and share what He has done for us. Because if we haven't experienced it, we can't tell people. So, do all things in love. I think it's time to get the bread out. Plus, I can't wait anymore. So here it is. Look how dark. It's still not as dark as she had it, but I don't know, pretty close. I think that's as good as it's gonna get. Turn the oven off. It smells so good. I have another question. So now I have to call my good friend Cheryl and ask her how. Do I take the bread out of the pans now or wait till it cools?
Hello?
Hey Cheryl, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm making this homemade bread, and do I let it cool in the pans or do I turn it out before it gets cool?
I usually, like after it comes out of the oven, you mean?
Yeah.
I usually take mine out right away.
Okay.
Put it on a cooling rack.
Okay, I will do
It
that.
seems like if you leave it in there, it gets kind of soggy or something. I don't know why.
Okay.
I don't know. That's how I do it, but...
Okay, perfect. That's what I'm gonna do then.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right. Yep. All right.
Bye. I wonder if you just leave them on their sides. I think I'm gonna do that. So I know my mom used to always, when she would get homemade bread out, she would butter the tops. So I'm gonna guess that would be something Grandma would do. So I'm gonna just do that. Sounds good and hollow. Now that bread's been in there for about an hour. So that surely should be good. Can you see that beautiful shiny bread? I gotta stop touching it. I can't wait to eat it. Soft, like butter. Is it like Grandma's? Yeah, it's the same color and everything.